Have you ever wondered why certain emotions seem to rise out of nowhere, like waves crashing in without warning? Perhaps you've felt it. A sudden sadness in the middle of a joyful moment, a sharp self-doubt when someone offers you love, or a heaviness in your chest, a loneliness that clings even when you're not alone. You try to reason with it. You try to tell yourself, I have no reason to feel this way, but the feeling remains. And that's because the reason doesn't live in your mind. It lives deeper. Many of the emotions we carry today were born long before we had words. They come from moments we barely remember, or from wounds we never had a chance to process. They come from the tone in a mother's voice, the absence of a father's gaze, the coldness in a room where warmth was needed. They are the echoes of unmet needs, of unseen pain, still living inside us like seeds waiting in the dark. And often, they are not even ours to begin with. Some of the sorrow you feel, some of the fear, the pressure, the shame, they were handed to you unconsciously by those who were also hurting, parents, teachers, generations who did not know how to love what they could not understand. It is not your fault that you feel this way. No child is born thinking they are unworthy. No child chooses to feel invisible. These beliefs are learned, absorbed, shaped by the world around us before we could even speak. Imagine a child walking through a forest, blindfolded. Every branch that scratches their skin, every rock that makes them fall. They believe they deserved it, because they cannot yet see that the path was filled with obstacles not of their making. This is how emotional wounds form. And yet, if no one comes to remove the blindfold, the child grows into an adult, still stumbling, still believing the pain is who they are. But here is the turning point. If the wound is not your fault, the healing still is your responsibility, not because you caused the pain, but because only you live with its consequences. Only you can choose to stop the cycle. Only you can pause, listen, and begin to care for the part of you that has never stopped hurting. And that is the first breath of freedom. In the next chapter, we'll explore the weight you carry and how much of it may not be yours to bear. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt heavy, like the air was thick with something you couldn't name? Or have you looked in the mirror and felt like you were wearing clothes that didn't fit, not just on your body, but on your soul? Sometimes the weight we carry isn't ours. It's not born from our choices, but from the emotional inheritance passed down through generations. You might be holding the anxiety your mother never spoke about, or the shame your father tried to drown in silence. You might be carrying the unhealed grief of a grandmother you never met, pain that lived in her and somehow found its way into you. We are born into stories already in motion, into family systems with invisible rules, into emotional climates that shape how we feel, how we relate, how we breathe, before we ever make a single decision. And no one tells us that we can question that. No one tells us we're allowed to put down what was never ours to carry. You may have been praised for being the strong one, but strength learned through emotional suppression isn't strength, it's survival. You may have been taught to please, to keep the peace, to stay small, not because you were wrong, but because someone else couldn't handle your truth. This is how emotional inheritance works. It's not written in DNA, it's passed in silence, in unspoken expectations, in the way you were looked at, or not looked at, in the tension at dinner tables, in the moments when your sadness was too much, or your joy was too loud. You learned to carry it so well, you forgot it was ever put on your shoulders. And here's the quiet tragedy. Because the pain wasn't yours, it never quite fit, yet it still shapes the way you see yourself. Like wearing a coat that's 3 sizes too big. It drags behind you, catches on your movements, but you think, maybe this is just what life feels like. No, this is what unquestioned pain feels like. But pain is not identity, and silence is not safety. The moment you begin to name the weight, to say, this was never mine, you begin to free yourself, because there is a difference between compassion and obligation. You can love those who gave you their pain without continuing to live by it. You are not betraying your family by healing. You are liberating your lineage. As Jung wrote, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But you don't have to carry it forever. You can put it down, gently, respectfully, with tears maybe, but with truth. In the next chapter, we'll explore the trap of silent victimhood and how staying stuck in our wounds, even unconsciously, can become a way of hiding from our own power. There is a strange comfort in pain we've known for a long time. It wraps around us like a familiar blanket, scratchy, worn, but dependable. It tells us, this is who you are, and part of us believes it. Because for years, we had no other story. When you've been hurt deeply, repeatedly, something happens inside. You begin to organize your life around the wound. You become cautious, careful. You avoid certain people, certain emotions, certain dreams, because you've learned they might lead to pain. And slowly, without realizing it, you build your identity around survival. This is not weakness. It is human. It is adaptive. It is what kept you safe when safety was scarce. But here's the danger. The longer you live inside the story of what was done to you, the harder it becomes to see what can still be done by you. Victimhood, when clung to, becomes a mirror that reflects only the wound. You stop seeing your power. You stop reaching for change, because the story becomes comfortable, predictable, safe in its own kind of sorrow. And yet, something inside you still longs to be free. Maybe you felt it, that quiet voice that whispers, there must be more than this. The aching hunger to rise beyond the roles you didn't choose. But to do that, you must first recognize the trap. Pain does not make you weak. But staying trapped in pain, refusing to grow from it, that is a choice, a painful one, and a lonely one. Carl Jung once said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. The moment you begin to question the story, the moment you ask, what if this isn't all I am? That is when healing begins. Not by erasing the past, but by refusing to let it define your future. Because there's something more frightening than pain. It's realizing how much of your life you've spent avoiding your own power. To step out of victimhood is not to say what happened didn't matter. It's to say, it mattered so much that I refuse to let it end here. You are not weak for having been broken. You are strong for still being here. But strength is not in silence. It's in choice. It's in saying, I will not let my story end in survival. I was meant to live. In the next chapter, we'll explore the turning point, the sacred moment when you stop blaming yourself and start taking responsibility for your healing with compassion, not guilt. There is a moment in every healing journey that feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you, the pain you've known, in front of you, the unknown, and in your hands, the power to choose. But here's the truth that shakes the soul. It's not your fault you were hurt, but it is your responsibility to heal. At first, that may sound unfair, and maybe it is, but fairness has never been the currency of healing. The truth is, blame keeps us stuck. Responsibility sets us free, because blame is about the past. Responsibility is about what you will do with the present. Blame says, they did this to me. Responsibility asks, what will I now do for me? You see, when you hold on to blame, even when it's justified, you hand over your power to the very people or situations that once hurt you. You let them define your story. You wait for an apology that may never come. You replay memories hoping they'll end differently, but they won't, because the past does not heal us. We do. Responsibility doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It means saying, I will no longer let it define who I become. This is not an act of logic, it is an act of love. To take responsibility for your healing is to say, I love myself enough to no longer abandon my heart in the hands of others. It is not a burden, it is a birthright. Imagine a woman standing in the ruins of a house once burned down by someone else's fire. She did not light the match, but only she can decide to rebuild. Only she can choose to plant flowers where the ash once was. Only she can say, this pain ends with me. Carl Jung reminds us, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. To accept responsibility is to accept your own power. Not to shame yourself, but to meet yourself with deep, compassionate honesty. It is the moment when you stop waiting to be rescued. and realize you are the one you've been waiting for. Responsibility is not about control, it's about response. It's the ability to respond differently, consciously, lovingly. And that changes everything. In the next chapter, we will descend into the shadows, to explore the parts of ourselves we were taught to reject and discover the gold hidden in the darkness. What if the very part of yourself you've spent your whole life hiding is the part that holds your freedom? There is a side of you, unspoken, uncomfortable, often denied, that waits in silence, the part that felt too angry, too needy, too broken, too much, the part that was punished, ignored, or laughed at. Carl Jung called this the shadow. The shadow is everything about ourselves we do not know or do not want to know. It's the part of your soul that you were told not to bring to the light. So you buried it. You put on a smile. You became who you were expected to be, and you left your real self behind like a child waiting by the side of the road. But here's what no one tells you. What you reject in yourself does not disappear. It hides, and it rules you from the dark. It shows up in self-sabotage, in envy, in rage, in the way you shrink when love gets too close, in the way you chase validation yet never feel worthy. You're not broken. You're haunted by the parts of you that never stopped needing your love. The shadow is not evil. It's simply unloved. It's made of everything you were told not to be, but still are. And here's the paradox. The more you deny it, the more control it has. But the moment you turn toward it, something miraculous happens. You begin to see the pain behind the anger, the longing behind the pride, the tenderness behind the fear. Imagine you're walking through a dark forest, terrified. You hear a sound, you run. But what if you turned around? What if the creature chasing you was just a younger version of yourself, crying out to be seen? That is the shadow. And when you stop running, when you sit with it, not to judge but to listen, you begin to reclaim the lost pieces of your soul. This is the work of wholeness, not perfection, not purity, but integration. You were never meant to be only light. You are the full spectrum of being, the wound and the healer, the anger and the love, the silence and the scream. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your initiation. To make peace with your darkness is to finally walk in the world without fear of your own depths. In Jung's words, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In the next chapter, we will begin the process of healing from within, not by changing who you are, but by returning to yourself with open arms. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel it? That quiet ache beneath the surface? It's not just sadness. It's longing. A longing to be held, seen, heard as by you. We spend our lives searching for something, in lovers, in success, in approval. But what we're truly searching for is home. Not a place, not a person, but a feeling. A return to a self we abandoned long ago. This is the beginning of true healing, not fixing yourself, not becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you to forget. There is a child inside you, not imaginary, real, a part of your psyche still frozen in time, still waiting in the room where no one came, still asking the question, what did I do wrong? She's not weak, he's not broken. That child is the keeper of your truth. You see, when we are hurt as children, we don't stop loving the people who hurt us. We stop loving ourselves. Because it's safer to believe I'm not enough than to accept that someone else failed to love us fully. And so we build lives around that silent belief. We become who we think we have to be accepted, admired, safe. But the wound never heals, because the child never left. She waits for you. He cries in your dreams. They whisper through your anxiety, your perfectionism, your fear of being truly seen. And now, it's time to come home. Not by force, not by shame, but by the most powerful act of all, listening. Imagine sitting down beside that child, not to tell them to be quiet, but to ask, what have you been trying to say to me all these years? They may speak through tears, through silence, through memories you had forgotten. But in that moment, when you listen, something begins to soften. something begins to shift. You are no longer the child needing love. You are now the one who can give it. This is the return. This is the moment when healing begins, not because someone finally gives you what you needed, but because you do. You can build a new home inside yourself, one made not of walls but of warmth, not of perfection but of presence. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To become who you truly are, you must first welcome who you've always been. In the final chapter, we will speak of legacy, of what happens when you choose to heal not only for yourself, but for everyone who came before you and everyone who will come after. Somewhere along the journey, a quiet realization arrives. It doesn't come with fireworks, it doesn't scream, it whispers, "This ends with me." Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in power. The kind of power that comes when you decide, truly decide, to stop passing your pain forward, to stop repeating what hurt you, to stop waiting for someone else to change first, because your healing isn't just for you. It echoes backward to your ancestors and forward to every life your life will ever touch. Maybe your parents didn't know how to love you the way you needed. Maybe they carried wounds too heavy to hold gently. Maybe they too were children once, waiting for someone who never came. And now here you are, still standing, still breathing, still capable of becoming what no one ever was for you. That is a sacred responsibility, to choose to break the cycle. To become a safe place first for yourself and then for others. To be the kind of presence that says, "I've been there, and I chose something different." Because when you heal, something remarkable happens. You stop seeking love through pain. You stop confusing survival with living. You stop giving your power away in hopes of being chosen, and realize you are the chooser now. The world may never thank you for this inner work, but the next generation will feel it, even if they never know your name. Because every time you speak kindly to yourself, every time you pause instead of react, every time you say no to what breaks you and yes to what honors you, you are planting something that will outlive you. You are not just healing a life, you are healing a lineage. Carl Jung reminds us, you are not only responsible for what you say, but also for what you do not say. So speak now, to yourself, to the silence, to the pain. Say, "It ends with me," and something beautiful begins. Your healing is not selfish, it is sacred. It is the most courageous legacy you will ever leave. So now, I ask you, what part of you have you been avoiding, that is quietly waiting to be loved? What weight have you been carrying that was never yours to begin with? What would your life look like if you stopped waiting to be healed and started walking toward your own soul? The truth is, you are not broken. You are becoming. And in that becoming there is power, quiet, steady, ancient. If this video touched something deep in you, if it gave words to a feeling you've never been able to explain, consider supporting this channel with a super thanks. Your support helps us continue creating these safe spaces for emotional healing and soulful reflection. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you won't miss the next step in your journey. Another video is waiting for you now, right on your screen. It may hold exactly what your heart needs next. And always remember, healing doesn't erase who you were, it returns you to who you truly are.